Pervez Mistry Shihan to share his experiences.
It has many, can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. It's many corrections all over the place, as you can see here and elsewhere. And this was the result of more than 17 years of research into this particular one kata. The first time I had a symposium on it was many, many years ago. And everybody asked me, Sensei, you're going to have one kata? You're going to, for the whole day? I said, yeah, for the whole day. At the end of that, they told me, Sensei, it wasn't enough. We need another day, please. So, before I start, I would like to present these two books to Mr. Carrick Johnson. I'll give it to Mr. Rai, D.B. Rai. And the second one to one of the other people who, Rai Sensei has already got my book, to Mr. Ravi Wazir. Okay. As my student just mentioned, the word martial, Devansha, and I'm really happy that he is where he is today. He's a little mischievous, but that's exactly what you want in a karateka. Fun. Anyway, so the martial, what does martial mean? It means something completely different in Japanese, whereas its translation into English. In English, by the Oxford Dictionary, I had to look that up in the, on the internet. Martial, by the Oxford Dictionary, means anything relating to fighting or war. Military arts. Spirit, what does spirit mean? According to the Oxford Dictionary, it means the non-physical part of a person which is the seat of emotions and character. We seek harmony between body and spirit. But that could be said for the mind also, couldn't it? The seat of emotions and character. Is it the mind? Is it the spirit? What is it? Your guess is as good as mine. But when you come to the Japanese concept of the word martial, it has a whole new meaning. I don't know if any of you have ever read a book by Iaidō Nitobe, who was the ambassador in America in 1908. And when he was asked, what is, you don't have religion in your country, or how do you garner basic morality to your children? So he started thinking, and the book he wrote was Bushido, The Soul of Japan. So if you haven't read it, I sincerely request you do. I've been reading it over many years, and every time I read it, I get some new insight into the Japanese way of thinking. I will read out a small para on what Nitobe-san refers to in his interpretation to the meaning of martial, as his opening line in Bushido, The Soul of Japan. Chivalry, this is his interpretation of martial, is the flower, no less indigenous to the soil than its emblem, the cherry blossom. Nor is it a dried-up specimen of an antique virtue preserved in the herbarium of our history. It is still a living object of power and beauty among us, and it assumes no tangible shape or form. It nonetheless sends the moral atmosphere and makes us aware that we are still under its potent spell. This from a man who describes his interpretation of martial as chivalry. Some martial arts, the many martial arts, not all of them are related to spirituality or could be associated with spirituality. For example, martial could also mean boxing, wrestling. Okay? But what was the fundamental unit that brought about the martial way, or Bushido? Basically, feudalism. This was the engine of evolvement of the birth of the fighting warriors in the West, which in Old English were called Schnit, which later became Kencht, and finally became knight. Similarly to the word Bushi, fighting knights, and which later were called samurai or warrior. There are many martial arts today, as I mentioned earlier, which have no relationship to, including fencing in the West. In Japan, it's a whole different ballgame. All the martial arts in Japan, most of them, are in some way or form related to spirituality. But as Devan Shah said, spirituality comes at a much later level. It doesn't come early on. And spirituality is the least thing you think of when you're joining a dojo, right? Okay, am I going to beat that guy? He's beating me up, I'm going to beat him up. That's what comes to mind first. But as you go along, and once you start and you want to complete your journey, it takes years to reach that level. Eastern martial arts most linked out concepts of spirituality. For example, one of the oldest martial arts in the world is Kalaripayattu, from which eventually we got karate, kung fu, and all the rest of it, the whole gamut of it. And in every gurukul or school in Kerala of Kalaripayattu, there's a small shrine of Hanuman, which is a direct linkage to whether you call it spirit or whether you call it religion or whatever. Okay? But there is that linkage. In Muay Thai, the martial art of Thailand, before every competition, a ritualized form is performed before the bout, and it's termed as Waikaru, Ram. Why? Which is the way of the fighters to show respect to each other by putting the hands together as if in prayer and bowing. Kru means teacher, while Ram could refer to the Hindu god Ram or may also refer to dance in the old Thai traditional style. Jiu-Jitsu and Judo are not directly linked to spirituality except in the sense of mutual respect and moral behavior. But nearly all karate dojos will have a shrine at the most respected area of the dojo called Henko or Shinzen. In fact, in most Goju Ryu dojos, there's a picture or a wooden sculpture of Busuganashi, which is the karate deity, or the deity of karate. And legend has it that the founder, Chogun Miyagi, used to get dreams of Busu Ganashi, showing him certain forms, when he awoke, he would then practice these forms. And that was the start of the concept of Go-Ju, hard and soft, right? These are, again, paradoxes. In Western thought, religion, war, and glory were the three souls of a perfect Christian knight. In Japan, this was the other way around. It began with Buddhism, and in particular Zen Buddhism, as the warrior class found that this type of meditation could focus the consciousness, which helped them control the emotions even in a fight or on the battlefield. In fact, there is, I don't know if you've heard of this particular form of martial art of Japan called Iaidō. Have you heard of it? Yeah? Yes, of course. I'm excluding these people, yeah. I'm talking about the general public. Okay. Iaidō would be translated as the art of the fast draw in Japanese swordsmanship. I'm not talking about the gunslingers of the West, but something very similar. In fact, in my early career, I was very fortunate to get a scholarship to the Seibukan Academy in Kyoto. And that's where I started my karate training, actually. There, we had the spirit of the samurai, which was a demonstration of all the different forms of martial arts that were actually practiced in Seibukan Dojo. There was Nagi-Nata-Do, which I think few people will know what that is. It's the art of halberd fighting. As most of you are aware of, in Okinawa, weapons were forbidden in the late 14th, early 15th century. And nobody could carry a sword. So they used weapons of, they used agricultural weapons. And there the scythe, the long stick with a blade, curved blade. In English, you call it halberd. In Japan, it was called, in Okinawa, it was called naginata. And it's a weapon used mainly by the ladies, as they used to reap the fields. Right? And it's an exceptional weapon. I've seen it in action. I know what it is. But coming back to Iaidō, Sensei Watanabe, who was the main sensei for Iaidō, he used to have, in his demonstration, he used to demonstrate, there used to be four, pedestals, okay? One with the size of a man's neck, with a straw, a bundle of a man's neck. This used to be front and back, and on the two sides, you'd have the straw bundle of a man's shoulder and waist. So you'd have north, south, east, and west. He would sit down in the center in the seiza, or the Japanese position. Then he would get up in the han-seiza, or the half-kneeling position, with his hand on the katana, or the fighting sword. He would draw it about halfway out, and he would stop. Then he would stand up, and all you saw was a blurry of the sword, a blur of the sword, literally a blur of the sword. You couldn't actually see the sword like the sword. You just see a blur. And he's back in his half-kneeling position with the sword back in its scabbard. And the pedestals, the straw bundle was still attached. I mean, nothing happened. That's what he would do on the floor, and the bundles would fall down. So, this was Iaidō. And Iaidō is directly linked to spirituality of a very high order, because it requires years and years of training to wield a Japanese sword without cutting yourself in half. They are so sharp. And if you haven't seen it, I'd like you to see a video, Forging of a Japanese Samurai Sword. It's on YouTube. Please see it. It's worth it. A foremost teacher of Iaidō, when he saw his student master the utmost art, utmost top level of his art, told him, beyond this, my instruction must give way to Zen teaching. So that's where you have the connection or the bridge between Iaidō and its equivalent of spirit. Deep yogic meditation is called dhyana, and Zen is its Japanese equivalent. And these two are related in most of the other martial arts as well. In fact, in traditional martial art, the emphasis is mostly on two factors: a high level of fitness, probably similar or very close to that of an Olympic athlete, and self-defense. In karate, though, there's a very famous saying, karate ni sente nashi. There is no first attack in karate. All the katas always begin with a defensive movement, never an attacking movement. So we come to a paradox. Why learn how to fight if you're never going to use it? And this reminds me of a story I was witness to in South Africa when I was invited there by Sensei Baki Slavusha, who's the one of the senior most instructors in my system, my style of karate, which is IOGKF, International Okinawan Goju-Ryu Karate Federation. And I joined Sensei Higo 7 years before the federation was actually formed. So I've been with them for a long time. To come back to this little story, we were in South Africa, and at that time, it was the time of the apartheid, when Asians were not allowed to go to restaurants. And that included Sensei Higaona, who was there, and of course myself and a few others. Fortunately for all of us, Sensei Bakis, who's very well known in South Africa, had taken special permission to allow us to enter. We went in, Sensei excused himself and went to the loo. Afterward, he came back and he started talking as if nothing had happened. In the meantime, a huge South African, 6 foot plus, big as well, walked in and from the direction of the toilet and walked back to the table near the bar. And later on, Baki Sensei, who knew him, told us this story, that this gentleman, the South African gentleman, was desperate to go to the loo. And he kept banging on the door. Sensei Higaona was inside. And he kept banging. Finally, Sensei opened the door. And this guy was so angry. Okay? He practically was peeing in his pants, but he was so angry. So he's about to hit Sensei. Fortunately for him, he looked at Sensei, and slowly his hand went down. And when he walked back to the table, his friends asked him, why didn't you hit him? He is far bigger than him. And Sensei Higana is shorter than me. So, not that I'm tall, just... So, he says, the minute I looked in his eyes, I knew that if I laid a finger on him, I would be a dead man. That's the power of karate at that level. It shows. And that's where the spirit comes in. Gandhiji said, the strongest weapon in any armory is non-violence. Through the rigors of constant training, where the body is put through pain, fatigue, endurance, it is the mind and ultimately the spirit that becomes indomitable. The fire to never give up, to continue no matter what the odds, then comes to the fore. And it becomes a doctrine to live by. At that point of time, it ceases to be a martial art. It becomes a way of life. After many years of study and daily practice of the katas, the inherent secrets of these katas begin to percolate into the subconscious of the practitioner, whereas awareness expands into the realms beyond the physical, the esoteric. We've all heard of biofeedback. You know what biofeedback is, right? You have voluntary and involuntary movements of the body. Voluntary movements are like this, where you can flex your muscles. That's a voluntary movement. Okay? An involuntary action would be to control one's pulse. I call one person, anybody who knows how to feel the pulse, please stand up. Anybody knows how to feel somebody's pulse? I'm sure you do. Yeah? Okay. Actually, I wanted you for something else. But come up in any way. Mr. Wazir. Please. Okay. So I would have you feel my pulse over here, like this. Yeah? I think that. Can you feel it? Yeah? Okay. Now, watch carefully. Can you still feel it? Right?
How did you do that?
I'd like two other people to come up on stage. Please. One more. Could you hold the mic, please? Thanks. Okay. Please, yeah. All right. Now I'm going to demonstrate another aspect of a different type of power. Okay? Non-physical. It uses ki or chi. And I'm going to ask a strong friend over here, who's got far more muscle than I have, to catch my hand. I'll just take my watch off. Thanks. Here. Okay? And I'll ask our friend Devant, the muscular man himself, to feel the resistance of my muscles. And with the other hand, catch me on the elbow joint. Yeah? Now, push the hand in. I'm using my muscle force now. Go, push it. Strong, really strong. Go on. You can see the hand moving. Okay? All right. Now, I ask you to catch it again, please. You also? Yeah, you can hold it there. And here, here, here. Here and here. All right, now I request you both to pull. Go ahead.
Bend your...
Yeah, bend it. You can feel my muscles. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. It's not magic. It's breathing. That's all it is. And that's the power of the breath. Here is the generator, okay? Imagine my hand as a limp hose. Shockproof, it's okay. Imagine my hand as a limp hose. You can bend it, you can twist it, you can do what you like with it. I turn on the generator and I force the power of the breath, or chi, or ki, into the hand without any tension on the muscle line, as you saw. And I put forth this chi. So it's similarly when you put forth water through a hose pipe under a compressor. You can't bend that hose at all. It becomes as rigid as a bar of steel. Same here. That is what you saw. So it's not magic, it's practice, it's perseverance, and it's training. That's all it is. And I would now, as we're coming to the end of our, so I don't want to take any more time, I'd like to read a very short bit from my book, Sanchin, 3 Battles. Mudras. In martial arts of Kung Fu and Karate Do are hand, arm, and body positions meant to stimulate different areas of the body in conjunction with breathing and to affect the flow of the vital force, ki, or chi, in the body. The mudras originated in Hinduism and Buddhism and are identical to the hand and arm and body positions used in Karate Kata today. In fact, Sanchin Kata has many of these esoteric mudra, hand and arm positions. The hidden and symbolic movements of Sanchin occur when the fists are first crossed by the arms, Sankai Gasho, and represent principles of universal knowledge in a physiological form. In India, this symbolization is called mudra. In China, it's called sing. While in Japan, the term given to the hidden symbols is I. It will be observed, too, that nearly all movements of Sanchin Kata are mudras. The circular movements of the complete kata relate to and indicate theory of rebirth or return to the source. In the form of Sanchin, the hand becomes tools of the individual will, and the arm crossing reflects and are subject to a harmonious or universal will. The internal expansion of the body while inhaling during performance indicate a desire to rise above earthly ideals, while stabilizing the body during exhalation reflects the realities of life. As the fist strikes forward powerfully, they create the illusion of an irresistible force pushing out and the obliteration of all that is evil within yourself. We're both good, we're both bad. But the good should oversee the bad. And that's where martial arts and the spirituality of martial arts comes in. Thank you.
Thank you, Shihan. That was amazing. I think it'll take us all